Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. Our last class we spoke on at-tayammum. Now we have the last section of Kitab al-Tahara, the book or the chapter of Tahara. The last section is Bab al-Hayd, the Bab of menses. And before we move on, we must understand that when we study fiqh, no matter what our approach is, whether it is the fiqh that's based off of a madhab, a school of thought, a traditional orthodox school of thought, specifically the main four schools, or whether we study fiqh based off of directly from the hadith, fiqh al-hadith or fiqh al-sunnah, or whether we study comparative fiqh, or whether we take fiqh from the other non-orthodox, quote-unquote, or non-classical schools, whether it be the schools of the school of the al-Bahiyyah, whether it is the school of Ash-Shawkani, for example, or any other school that is not quote-unquote orthodox from the four main. And we're not saying that there are only four schools of thought, and any other school of thought besides those four is wrong and baseless and erroneous. La, we don't believe that, as some people say. But we're just trying to make a point here. However you study fiqh, you cannot lose focus on the spiritual aspect of fiqh and the purpose of studying fiqh. And that studying fiqh is from the greatest acts of worship, from the greatest acts of devotion and seeking closeness and nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is studying fiqh. As I believe it was Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, مَا عُبِدَ اللَّهُ بِمِثْلِ الْفِقْهِ. He says, there isn't an act of worship that a slave can perform seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better and more beloved than fiqh. The point that we're trying to get to is that there has to be a spirituality behind it. You don't learn these things just to learn information, or as he say, sound bites, pieces and chips, and different views and la. Rather, we only study it, inshallah, to become closer to Allah, to become better Muslims, to perform the obligatory ibadah in the correct sound manner, and to teach others. And every time we go to a higher level or a higher stage, or we mention different views, then it's only for the purpose of mastery, for the purpose of becoming an expert in something, to learn how to do it proficiently in the correct, proper, simple manner. And you cannot do that unless you know what's in and what's out, what's good and what's bad, what's correct and what's incorrect. And in order to have a thorough concept of it, in order to perfect that art and perfect that craft, that chosen art that you chose to study, you have to learn the different aspects of it and the different angles of it, alright? All perspectives. Khair, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, when we study at-tayammum, we should realize that at-tayammum is a major act of worship, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it obligatory upon us to be clean, to be physically and spiritually clean. And there's never a time in which a Muslim is not clean, in which a Muslim does not spiritually cleanse him or herself, whether it's with wudu, whether it's by making ghusl, or whether it's with tayammum. And the whole concept of the spirituality of Islam is that everything is not always physical or tangible or material. Somebody may say, why do I put dirt on my face and my hands? It's dirt on me. It's not cleaning anything. It's not washing anything off. But it's spiritual. It's ritual. It's ta'abbudi. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can make the salah obligatory upon us, make it obligatory upon us to use the water to make wudu, and punish us if we can, and take us to account for that. But He doesn't. He's just, and He's kind, and He's courteous, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He gave us a substitute. He gave us a chance and an option and an ability to seek closeness to Him, to be near to Him, even when we don't have all of the means of making purification. And it's a very divine concept. Also menses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made an act of worship in every aspect of our lives, every sphere of our living and existence. There is some type of ibadah to perform. There is a rule, there is a law, there's a supplication, there's a means of getting closer and nearer to Allah the Mighty and the Majestic. So it's something that when we study different technicalities of fiqh, we cannot lose sight of the main goal of studying fiqh, which is worship, which is spirituality, which is getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and purifying your heart, your soul, your mind, and your physical body. Khair, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore the author, he says, Babul Hayd. لم يأتي في تقدير أقله وأكثره ما تقوم به الحجة وكذلك الطهر فذات العادة المتقررة تعمل عليها وغيرها ترجع إلى القرائن فدم الحيض يتميز عن غيره فتكون حائضا إذا رأت دم الحيض ومستحاضة إذا رأت غيره وهي كالطاهر وتغسل أثر الدم وتتوضأ لكل صلاة والحيض لا تصلي ولا تصوم ولا توطأ حتى تغتسل بعد الطهر وتقضي الصيام. قال فصل في النفاس والنفاس أكثره 40 يوما ولا حد لأقله وهو كالحيض. He then says باب الحيض. Now we're not going to go too deep here, but it's some things that we must explain in a little bit of detail, and there are a few other views that we may have to mention to make things simple and clear from the actual text. He says لم يأتي في تقدير أقله وأكثره ما تقوم به الحجة. He says there is no valid proof. There is no proof that is acceptable, that is authentically proven, or clear and frank and direct to the point, that establishes the maximum or minimum amount of days of a woman's menstrual cycle. In the Sharia, we know that menses are well known. Linguistically, the word hayd is as-sayalan, for something to flow and pour forth. And according to the fuqaha, the ulama of fiqh, then they say it's natural blood that flows from a woman during specific times with a specific trait and characteristic. The blood is well known, the time in most cases is well known, and that the blood is natural. It's not blood of a sickness, it's not blood of an illness, it's not blood that comes from a wound, but it's natural blood that comes from our natural body. Alright? Very important to understand these basic terms, especially when we get into the concept of al-istihada, of irregular bleeding. So the blood of menses is the blood that is natural. It doesn't come from a sick woman or ill woman, blood that is natural from her body. That comes, we don't have to go into other medical terms about the woman's womb, okay, and what happens when she's mincing, alright, and the blood that is used to nourish the fetus, or when she becomes pregnant and she doesn't conceive, the blood and everything is now removed from her body and it leaves her body. That's all well known. But the concept of the blood being natural blood, and the blood of menses is not just blood, a woman's bleeding, no, but it's blood that is natural. Very important. The author, he says, there is nothing that is strong enough and clear enough that would establish the maximum and minimum amount of days. A very important issue here. If a woman has menses for a day and then she's clean, she bled for 24 hours, and in the 25th hour she was now pure, alright, she stopped bleeding, does that count as menses? Or does the mens have to be 72 hours, 3 days and 3 nights? Or can the mens be 24 hours? Or is it the minimum amount of mens absolute, that whenever she gets menstrual blood for an hour, 2 hours, okay, 5 hours, it comes and it goes, then that is the blood of menses? That's the argument and the issue at hand. The author's opinion is that there is no specific time in the Sharia. There is no hadith that is authentic, that's direct, clear, frank, right to the point, that specifies how long, how little. Alright? Some ulama, their opinion is that there is no menstrual cycle less than 24 hours. Other ulama, they have the opinion that there is no menstrual cycle that is less than 72 hours, yani three whole days. And until a woman bleeds for 3 whole days, then it is not the blood of mens, and it's something else. Now, we normally don't like to mention the difference of opinion in this beginner's level of study, but for this reason, or for this concept, it's a must. And that is because sometimes it can become difficult if you say that there's no specific time limit. If a woman bleeds for a couple of hours, then she stops, she makes ghusl, does she fast? Can her husband be intimate with her? Then the blood comes back again, she's in the masjid, she's out of the masjid. It can be difficult, it can be burdensome. So perhaps those ulama who say that at least it has to be for 1 day, a complete day, then they say that is easier. Now, we have several different concepts here before we move any further with regards to the types of women when it comes to mincing. We have first and foremost that which is called al-mubtada'ah. We have a woman who gets her first mince, a young girl. Alright, she's young, 14, 13, 12, 15, 9, 10, al-muhim, a young teenage girl, or even if she's not a teenager, she could be 12 years old. She get a mens at the age of 11. Al-Muhim, what's important is that this is the first time she gets her menstrual cycle. That's one type of woman. The second type of woman is the type of woman who has a regular mens. She's of age, she's already began puberty, she gets her menstrual cycle, and she's had it several times. And it's well known when it comes and when it goes. The days, the time, the length, the description is well known to her. Another type of woman is a woman who's of age, but her menstrual cycle doesn't have a specific time period. It comes and goes. Sometime at the beginning of the month, sometime at the end, sometime at the middle, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, like this and like that. And then we have a woman who is older. She's an older woman, all right? 40 years old, 50 years old, and blood comes to her from time to time, occasionally, sporadically, all right? So we have basically a woman who knows her cycle, a woman who doesn't know her cycle, a woman who's a little older, okay, she's very mature, and we have a woman who's very young. All of these rulings are crucial in understanding the bab of menses. So let's try to just get into the author's kalam, and perhaps we'll go back to those things and shed light upon them when we have to. The author says, thus is the ruling with regards to tuhur, pure state. In other words, there's no time limit on how long or how short a woman can be clean. Alright, that's the author's opinion. He then says, فَذَاتُ الْعَادَةِ الْمُتَقَرِّرَةِ تَعْمَلُ عَلَيْهَا. He says a woman who has a normal menstrual cycle is to act upon what's known. In other words, she knows that it comes in the beginning of the month for 5 days. The blood, the color of the blood, the thickness of the blood, the odor of the blood, abdominal pains. She may go through some emotional changes, a mood swing, whatever the case may be, lower back pains. Okay, she doesn't necessarily need all of those things because she knows when her mens comes. It comes at the beginning of every month for 5 days, or 5 to 6 days, no longer than 6 days. 5 to 6 days, or 4 to 6 days. That is her menstrual cycle, and it's well known at the beginning of each month. Khalas. When she gets the menses, then she acts as if she's a mensing woman, which he's going to mention, what she shouldn't do, what she cannot do. He then says, وَغَيْرُهَا. He says women who don't have normal cycles, تَرْجِعُ إِلَى الْقَرَائِنِ. They go back to the context clues. In other words, is no specific time of her menstrual cycle. It can come in the beginning, as we said, the middle, or the end. 3 days or 7 days. So she goes back to the context clues. In other words, let her look at the type of blood. The type of blood. Alright? The odor of the blood. The feelings that she has. He then says, فَدَمُ الْحَيْضِ يَتَمَيَّزُ عَنْ غَيْرِهِ. He says because menstrual blood is distinct from other types of blood. He says, فَتَكُونَ حَائِضًا إِذَا رَاتَ دَمَ الْحَيْضِ. In other words, we have a woman. A woman bleeds for 20 days. Alright? 20 days. There's no doubt that this blood is irregular. It's not normal. It's not the blood of mens for 20 days. What is she to do? 20 days not pray? 20 days not fast? 20 days she can't be intimate with her husband? 20 days she can't make i'tikaf? 20 days she can't sit in the masjid? 20 days she cannot read or touch the mushaf? So on and so forth. He says, when she sees the blood of menses, then she considers herself to be a mensing woman. In other words, among those 20 days, let's say the 7th day to the 11th day, the blood is thicker than normal. It's darker than normal. It has an odor not like the blood in the beginning or the end of those 20 days. Then she is to consider that blood between the 7th and the 11th day to be what? Blood of menses. But the blood, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6 is blood of other than menses. It's what we call al-istihada, irregular bleeding. The blood on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th day, that blood is all considered to be irregular blood. Because she distinguishes between menstrual blood and blood that is not menstrual blood. Clear, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, he says here that the blood of menses is well known. What it looks like, what it smells like, the rest of its character. Alright, the rest of its traits. Khair, inshallah. As for those days in which is not that type of blood, then she acts as if she's a normal woman. She acts as if she's a normal woman. The author he then says, ومستحاضة إذا رأت غيره. And when she sees the blood other than the blood of menses,